It all starts with this. This is the ultimate power.
Hello everybody, it's me, your good friend Sparky, and welcome back to Sonic Heroes and stage number 5, Casino Park. Let's see what Sonic and friends are up to today, shall we?
Boy, Amy sure doesn't give up that easy.
What is this place? Sure is bright here.
We got some time. Feeling lucky?
Sonic, we only have 24 hours left.
Okay, let's go.
This entire city is like a giant casino.
The buildings and roads are all part of a pinball table.
Pretty cool.
And while turned into balls...
We have no time for tutorials, Knuckles. We have to fall off the stage, right at the beginning. Anyway, it must be super inconvenient to live in this city, considering you have to probably go to work by traversing a giant pinball table in which you roll around on, and quite possibly, if you're not a super-powered hedgehog, echidna, or fox, you might suffer some concussions or brain damage or things like that. But anyway, yeah, welcome to Casino Park, the sort of traditional gambling slot machine casino type level that seems to be pretty common in Sonic games for whatever reason. I'm not sure why this became a thing, but it definitely became a thing, and there's no denying that. In general, yeah, a lot of this particular stage is comprised of those big pinball tables that also have sort of slot machine type things you can go into, win extra rings, or potentially lose rings, actually, so you gotta be careful about that. And making your way through the stage is all about navigating around these tables. Sometimes it's a matter of just trying to knock yourself upwards to the right location, and sometimes it's just about trying to get off the pinball table and actually, like, let yourself go downwards so you can exit it. It's a bit weird, it's a bit awkward, considering the sort of physics don't always seem to behave the way that you want them to behave. And it actually kind of ends up tying into a weird quirk of the game mechanics. In general, a good strategy to have when you're playing Sonic Heroes is to sort of swap characters while you're in the air. The characters themselves won't change necessarily until you touch down on the ground, but it's a good way to very quickly switch formations and then continue to make progress without having to swap while you're on the ground dealing with enemies and things like that. Like, you could get launched into the air and start to approach a location where there's a bunch of enemies nearby. Say you want to switch to power formation, you just swap to Knuckles up in the corner there while you're still in the air, and as soon as you touch down on the ground, it automatically switches to him, and you can very quickly start to bust some heads. But this stage with the pinball tables, it kinda works against you when you do that, because while you're rolling around on the stage, so are your teammates, and you kind of switch to them while you can switch between them, of course, while you're rolling around, and it's just sort of awkward because they're still sometimes on the table before you swap, and you gotta kind of stop and wait, because if you swap too early between characters, especially if you're doing that swapping in the air trick, it can automatically switch you back to the character while they're still rolling around on the pinball table, and it can send you backwards to an awkward spot, and sometimes you just kind of fall off. You're probably gonna see it once in a while, because no matter how much I try to train myself not to do that when I'm dealing with the pinball tables, it just doesn't work. It's a little awkward to explain, but as you're kind of watching, you start to sort of get the idea of what I'm exactly talking about. But overall, it's fine. You just gotta try not to be too swap happy when you're dealing with the pinball tables here. But it's you know, it's awkward and it's quirky, but it's okay. Speaking of the characters, though, we've had a good amount of time to talk about the speed characters and the flying characters and what kind of makes them different from each other. But we haven't really talked much about the power characters yet, which, arguably, a lot of the time when combat comes up, you spend a good majority of that time as your power character, because that's what they're meant for. And as mentioned towards the beginning of the project, they are definitely sort of the most versatile and unique of the characters, where there's a lot of different things you can do with them. Obviously, combat is their forte. In Knuckles' case, he does sort of a 1-2 punch combo with the B button, where he'll attach the his teammates, Sonic and Tails, to his hands and punch people with them, which is a bit strange when you say it out loud, but you know what? It's the Sonic universe, so it just kind of ends up working out. And there's a good example of that weirdness with the character swapping. I tried to switch to Tails too early, and it sent me to a completely different part of the stage where Tails happened to be at, because he somehow ended up there after being on the pinball table. So, yeah. It's hard to say exactly how he got there, but it's time to go back to the pinball table now. But anyway, talking again about Knuckles. He is just kind of a standard melee fighter for the most part, and when you level him up, I believe I mentioned this when talking about the level up mechanic, he starts to gain a third part to his combo chain where he starts to trigger earthquakes by slamming into the ground. And over time, that earthquake attack will level up to the point where it starts shooting magma balls out of the earth to kind of blow up and incinerate more enemies scattered about. Which is not bad, it's pretty nice. Definitely an effective attack. Knuckles, too, has access to what the game calls the Fire Dunk, which transforms his teammates into fireballs. While you're in the air, just like that, you can slam your teammates into the ground to attack enemies below you and destroy obstacles. And boy, slamming them into like sheets of plate glass like that must hurt a lot, but you know what? They're troopers. They can deal with it. Another important aspect about the power characters, though, outside of just their general combat abilities, on the ground and in the air, is that they have access to a gliding maneuver, which I guess sort of stems from Knuckles himself. We'll talk about a little more about that in just a minute, though, after we swap back to Team Dark, because Team Sonic's stage is over for now. They are all done venturing through the casino park, and honestly, that, aside from, you know, that death right at the beginning of the stage, that didn't go too badly. The casino stages here, they can be a bit awkward just from trying to deal with the pinball mechanics, but overall, they're not too bad. But of course, as mentioned, we're switching back to Team Dark as they venture into stage number 6, Bingo Highway, which is more or less kind of the same sort of deal, except in addition to all of the pinball mechanics that we're messing around with, we've also got bingo mechanics, which we'll see more of as the stage goes on. And we'll also definitely see more of what I was talking about with the power characters with their gliding maneuver. In Team Sonic and Team Dark's case, it's a maneuver called the Triangle Dive, which we'll see up here in just a second after we deal with this Spotlight enemy. Which, if you go into the Spotlight, he ends up calling more enemies, so you might want to be careful with that. Like here. Definitely a bit awkward to try and deal with the fan there and also the enemy nearby. But there we go. There's the triangle dive, where everybody sort of joins hands and glides through the air. You can use that maneuver to close gaps, but it's mostly meant for gaining height over top big fans like that. Continuing the trend of the characters being incredibly similar, Knuckles and Omega basically share the same moveset for the most part. They probably have the biggest differences between them as far as the Team Sonic and Team Dark members are concerned. They both have the triangle dive, as seen there. Oh, and we get a good look at the bingo mechanic here. As you roll down the tables, you collect numbers and you try to complete rows on your bingo card up there. Though it's really less bingo and more like extreme tic-tac-toe in a way. If you complete a row, you get rewards, which is usually just rings. But, you know, rings are good for extra lives, so there you go. Yes. As far as Omega's concerned, he and Knuckles, they share the triangle dive, and they share the same sort of melee power combat, which starts as kind of like just a 1-2 hit for Omega. And they also share the fire dunk, where they can propel the enemies, not the enemies, your teammates, down into the ground at enemies, I should say. And yeah, that's all fine and dandy, but where Omega and Knuckles start to differ is the maneuver that they gain as they level up. In Knuckles' case, it's the earthquake attacks, and in Omega's case, it's projectiles from his hands. It has, in general, a much wider range than the earthquake attacks, which is nice. And it sort of expands and evolves as you level Omega up. At level 1, he starts to shoot machine gun bullets. At level 2, he starts to shoot a big flamethrower. And at level 3, he has a missile attack that he uses, which then the missiles can sort of explode on contact with enemies, and the explosion radius can then destroy more enemies around them, and it's, in general, it's definitely kind of superior to what Knuckles can do. The Earthquake and the Magma Balls are very condensed to one location, but Omega has a much, much, much wider range of attack. I want to say even in regards to his, Omega vanishes here for some reason. And it takes a little while for him to come back. I don't really know why. I'm not sure what happened. I think he fell off the pinball table at just the wrong time, and it kind of eliminated him from the game for a bit. Because that's something that happens with these pinball tables. Your teammates can fall off of them into the void, and it'll take a little while for them to come back. Luckily, you can use Team Blast to sort of recover your team members if something like that happens. So now Omega is back. How was your adventure in the void, buddy? Did you enjoy it? I sure hope you did. Also, a little awkwardness of Chaos Inferno pausing time. It stops the fan from working. So you have to wait for time to resume in order to actually make progress in the stage. But in general, with Omega's attack, rather than having like the 1-2 punch maneuver Knuckles does, he swings his arms around in a circle around him. And it kind of leaves like a fire trail behind it. So in general, I want to say Omega, even in his basic punch attack, has kind of a wider range of strikes than Knuckles does, which I would say kind of makes him superior in a lot of ways. In general, though, combat with the power characters is going to be so quick and chaotic that you probably won't notice it most of the time. So that's all fine and dandy, really. It's not too much of a big deal to deal with. In general, though, thinking about the things that power characters do, they also have a maneuver called the auto-homing attack, which I forget if I've mentioned yet or not. But essentially what it means is that when you're not in active combat, your teammates will automatically start to homing attack enemies around them, allowing them to sort of start off the chain of attacks when they're not busy being attached to your fists. So that definitely can come in handy. But again, it's the sort of detail that combat is so kind of quick and insane sometimes in Sonic Heroes, you might not even necessarily notice it at first. But at the same time, that's fine. Either way, it gets the job done, and you sort of just can kind of zip around and obliterate enemies as quickly as you want. The power characters in general are just a lot of fun because of that. And hey, some more time pausing, which is nice. Here, though, it actually kind of pauses some of the moving platforms in place, which can make it a little easier to maneuver around them in some cases. Maybe not necessarily here, considering these platforms are kind of moving up and down. But all the same, it can come in handy, definitely. Yeah, I think that's kind of the general gist of what the power characters are like. It's notable, too, that when they, when Omega and Knuckles jump, specifically, they also have this sort of swirling attack that the teammates do around them. Also, Shadow continually going up the slide instead of going down it, which is a little awkward, but okay, buddy, you do you. And Shadow's all by his lonesome, too. He says don't fall there, but he's talking to no one. And there are plenty of places to fall off in this particular part of the board. So, do be careful. Because if you're not careful, well, you lose a life. And that's kind of the general gist of it. Also, yeah, right here, example of the physics being weird. We kind of roll up the stage and completely off it, leading to a life lost. But that's not too bad. We were not too far away from our general destination, so all things considered, we're still making good progress. Now yeah, the power characters, they have this sort of jumping maneuver where your teammates will sort of swirl around them as you sort of prepare them for the fire dunk. I don't think Vector and Big have that, though. Because in a lot of ways, Vector and Big work very differently from Knuckles and Omega. So they're an entire conversation in their own right. They're almost like completely different characters in a lot of ways. But of course, we will get to talking about Vector and Big in the next episode because we are just about done with Team Dark and Team Sonic stages here. It's just a matter of kind of making your way through the obstacles here and getting up into where the goal ring is. And in general, just because of the weird ways these stages work, they can be pretty difficult to A rank. So if you're ever playing this game and you're having trouble getting A ranks on these stages, just know that I definitely have had lots of trouble with them too. I think on my main game file and a couple of them, I've never gotten A ranks on some of these stages. It's a bit sad, really.
I couldn't even beat Gamma or Beta.
Falling off the stage also does not help. But as we wrap up the stages, we have to move on to our next boss fight and back to Team Sonic. And this boss fight is a bit of a different thing.
Eggman!
Why not have some fun while you can? After all, you only have one game, and we know who's going to win. Get them!
Come on, Eggman! Wanna play?
Be careful, Sonic!
I'll take care of him myself.
And what would a celebration on the town be without going to the carnival, the robot carnival specifically. This is a style of boss fight that I call the enemy horde boss fight, where essentially you are going through rounds of enemies popping up one after the other and sort of just taking care of them in sequence. In order to win the boss fight, you have to get through every single enemy that pops up. And there's no fighting Dr. Eggman directly. He's just kind of hovering around the stage and sort of just taunting you. Just shouting insults and things like that, telling his robots to attack you. It would be kind of neat if there was a way to attack Dr. Eggman and sort of maybe end the boss fight early. But overall, Yeah, these robot horde fights, they're not exactly super entertaining, I guess. I'm not really a big fan of them, especially as the game goes on and we get to the second one of these. This first one, it's not too bad. A big part of these fights is trying to figure out when is the best time to strategically use your team blasts, because certain groupings of enemies are definitely much tougher to deal with than others. And it's also important to sort of actively look for the level up orbs and power up your characters too. Because obviously as they level up, they start to get stronger and they make these sort of waves of enemies go by faster. Like right here, this is definitely a spot where using a Team Blast would definitely come in handy. Unfortunately, we are sort of out of the Team Blast at the moment. We'll get it back in just a second. But if you can save up a Team Blast for just that sort of occasion, then it definitely makes dealing with the heavy defense enemies much, much easier. Considering boss fights when getting ranks and things like that are all about your time, there's no, like, counting of your score or anything like that. Definitely trying to strategically use your Team Blast if you're aiming for A ranks is absolutely paramount in these fights. Just because if you don't, you can end up being caught without much of a way to quickly get things done. Also, trying to remember to use the Lightspeed attack with Sonic is probably really important in these fights too, but I never remember to use it. But, oh well. That's all for that one. Not too bad. It definitely gets worse later on. But that's going to be it for right now. Thank you very much for watching Sonic Heroes. This is your good friend Sparky signing off, and have fun with the bonus bits.
I wonder. Never mind, those guys were definitely up to no good.
Enemies detected 200 meters ahead. Initiating battle mode.
Hey guys, wait for me!
Cool city.
Our top priority is Eggman. Don't forget that. No time to waste.
You're too serious, Omega. Doctor!
Tell me, Doctor. What was I doing? Asleep on that base? And what about my memory?
Your memory? What memory? You have no past to remember.
What?
Well, I believe our time is up. I'll see you again soon. Get them.
Wait, Doctor.
It's useless, Shadow. We have to fight him.
Numerous targets detected inside perimeter. Prepare to intercept. Fire!